Rogue Radio. Now available on Mixcloud at mixcloud.com/Rogue Country. Keep it rogue.
How's it going, guys? Welcome to another episode of Into the Van. I'm Mike West. How have you been? Hope you're keeping well. I've been doing okay. I've been shifting through a lot of Pokemon cards. I know I'm in my 30s and that's a weird thing, but I swore down I had a ton of old cards from when I was a kid, and they were in my mum and dad's loft, and I knew they were there, man, and they finally let me up to have a look, and I found them. I've gone through them, and I think I might have something here. I might have something worth selling, so I've put them all on to Facebook Marketplace, onto some Pokemon groups. I've done a deep dive into those, and I'm hoping to, hopefully make some cash on them. I'll be using it to fund the next record, I assume, hopefully. But that's what I've been doing this week. What have you guys been up to? Let me know. Send me a message on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or wherever, and let me know what you've been up to, because I like to know. I care. I really enjoy what people are up to, and it might be an interesting thing to have a little talk about. I'm going to keep this short and sweet because this is a long episode, because this is a fucking brilliant episode in my opinion. Before we get super into it, Mothman is out now. Mothman is going to be available for streaming on the 9th of March. It's been on Bandcamp since the 9th of February, and the response has been absolutely amazing. People have been buying t-shirts, people have been buying the handwritten lyric sheets and the stickers, and the support's just been absolutely phenomenal. I couldn't wish for anything better, so I'm going to drop a little taster in for you now. Red eyes in the darkness do warn me of a fate, racing down a darkened road, praying it's not too late. I saw Mothman, I saw Mothman. And if you dig it, it's available on Bandcamp right now, and it's going to be on all streaming services from the 9th of March, which is 2 days after this podcast is released. But let's get down to it, man. If you know me, if you know this podcast, if you know my music, you know how big a fan of comic books I am. I've been to a ton of comic conventions for many, many years. I've met Stan Lee. I've got a ton of comic book artwork. I've got a ton signed. I've got a look, it's been something I've loved since I was a kid, when me nan got me my first Spider-Man comic when I was like 5 or 6 from W.H. Smith's, and I've loved it ever since. One of those comics and one of those artists and one of those teams that I fell in love with in my teens in 2009-ish was J.H. Williams. They brought out a book on Batwoman, and it was a reimagining of the character. It was a reboot just before DC redid all their comics with the launch of New 52. And I absolutely adored his style. He worked with Hayden Blackman. He worked with Greg Rucka on creating the character and the mythos and the legacy of it. And ever since then, I've been a huge fan of his paneling, of his work, of his style, of his writing. And he's just been one of those artists I've been absolutely enamored with and respected for a fucking long time. So obviously I followed him on social media since I found out he had a social media, and he has such an eclectic taste in music, and he always posts what he's listening to. So, I'd always chuck a few likes on that and stuff. Just, nothing creepy, nothing stalkery, nothing, hey, notice me. It was just, oh, I really like that record. I really like that thing. And then I got a tweet back when he followed me, and, he'd listened to my music and said it was good. And then when the Next Life pre-order came out in 2020, he was on that pre-order list. He'd bought a copy of the Next Life vinyl. And that fucking just absolutely blew my mind. And we've stayed in semi-contact since then, because I'm a huge fucking fan of his work. He likes my music, which is absolutely amazing. And I knew with the podcast I'd have to have him on at some point. And with the release of his new series with Hayden Blackman, Echolands, which just finished its first 6-issue arc in February, I thought now was a great time. The hardcover's coming out soon, so I messaged him and see if he had time. It took a bit of scheduling and stuff, but he's on. But Echolands is this phenomenal take on the fairy tale world, and it's just an insane a way to approach the medium. Everyone thinks comic books is superheroes and it has to be a certain way and look a certain way. And this creative team have completely thrown the rule book out and made something their own. It's phenomenal. And at the end of each comic, at the end of each issue, is a Sounds of Creation segment where you have what J.H. Williams has been listening to while he's been drawing that issue. At the end of issue 6, the next life is at the end of that issue. And I hadn't read it and I hadn't seen it before I talked to JH, and after that I'm not ashamed to say I cried a bit. To have my name and my music in an image book by a creative team that I've been absolutely a fan of since I found them it's just, I don't know what impact I'll ever make with my music, but it was just something that, that's a career and personal highlight for me, and it's just been something that's blown me away. And yeah, I urge you to check out Echolands issue 6. I'm at the back of it with my little Mike West, the Next Life white vinyl, and it humbled me to my core. I sent him an email to thank him, and he's just a really fucking nice guy. We get into how he's worked with The Sword and he's worked with Blondie, and it's a really, really interesting creative talk about comic books, about the medium, about your health, about how you look after yourself. And it goes on for a while because I just couldn't not listen to the guy. It's just like it was talking to an old friend. It was absolutely amazing to talk to. So I'm not going to ramble for too much longer because I could just ramble about how much his work has meant to me and how much this conversation meant to me and how much seeing my little name and my little record in the back of a phenomenal book just blew me away and meant so much. But, we get into that. We get into all of his work and how much of a fan of him I am. And I hope it's obviously going to come across through this because, again, I am rambling. So let's do it, guys. Without further ado, this is episode 46 of Into the Van with Mike West and J.H. Williams. In terms of your creation and stuff, do you try and set time aside as almost like a 9 to 5 for your routine, or is it kind of ad hoc when you have the time in between your life?
I try to keep it pretty regimented, but that can be difficult sometimes because life stuff comes up and you're like, oh, okay, well, so much for my work hours today, and yeah, it's kind of strange. I've been doing this for so long now that it makes me wonder how people who have to have a regimented job, no matter what, who don't have the luxury of being able to set it down if something comes up, how they deal with the thing that comes up.
Yeah. I think that's kind of, I don't know if it's the same situation in the States, but with admin jobs and things here, a lot of people work from home, and that kind of tipped the balance to work life, where it's if something did come up or they just needed to do maintenance or just clean the house, it just offered people a bit more time to do stuff. And I think that's why there's a pushback to people coming in the office in the UK. There's still a lot of people being no, this working from home split is working.
Yeah, especially because it's here's the thing I don't understand from any corporations that are pushing back on employees who are able to work from home. Doesn't affect their job performance. If anything, I've heard productivity is actually higher if people work from home, pushing them to come back to the office. And it's I don't understand this. It's how does that benefit the company to force someone to come into an office that they don't want to be at if they can do the job as good or better from where they are?
Yeah,
right?
100%. I think even if you broke it down fiscally, surely if they got rid of their office space or whatever, that would then save them even more. But it is interesting to see that kind of debate coming a bit more into the forefront because, me and my wife have talked about it, where you have that time to work from home, where it is even just not having the commute's a game changer in terms of what you want to do with your day.
For sure. And I wonder if some of the pushback that's starting to happen from corporations is they're trying to justify their office expense.
Yeah.
When they have their accounting has to be showing them you really don't need all the space at this point. But they've either made lease agreements or something in their way they budgeted things, and they're trying to justify the existence for that space. So
no,
I can only assume. I'm not, I don't know any facts about it. It's just like, to me, that seems like maybe a logical reason. If their employees are performing better at home, leave them be.
Yeah, no,
they're
definitely
doing more for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. And with your work, do you have like, obviously it's not as like regimented and stuff can come up, but do you have like a set time where like, I'm going to work for 6 hours or whatever? Or is it like, I want to complete a page, or is it more like task orientated or hour orientated, like your framework?
It's sometimes I try to keep a set amount of hours. I probably work on average maybe 7 to 8 hours, with a lunch break or a breakfast break. Sometimes it'll go over because like I'm in the middle of a process of something and I'm like, oh, I got to finish this figure or something like that, when I probably should have not started the figure and left it for the next morning. So that happens sometimes. But there's other times where the day will be shorter because of, like I don't want to start a certain process now because I know if I do, I'll be working till, an extra 2.5 hours. And I don't like to do that because, there's daily stuff around the house that, it's time to cook dinner or whatever kind of things come up. I gotta, be better about taking care of my health and exercise and all that kind of stuff comes into play. So I've always been pretty good about keeping it a set time, for the most part. And I get a little frustrated when things do come up and take away from that time, and that time cannot be made up. I'm not the type of individual like, well, I lost 4 hours today because of X, Y, and Z. Well, I better work another 4 hours tonight into the night. I used to do that, and that was bad. That was really bad. So I just have to, I have to come to terms with like, okay, that's the way the day went, and try not to be frustrated with it, which is hard sometimes because you're like, I need to get this done, especially when the pages I work on take a long time to begin with to complete them. So any little things like that can be, emotionally a navigation.
No, definitely. And saying about like the breaks and things, like I had to do, all I had to do was write a few like lyric sheets today for people who'd bought some stuff on my site. And I only did about 12 over the space of an hour and a half. And just using Sharpies, and even then was just like my hand and my neck was just like cramping up. Do you have to like stretch regularly and get away from your desk and stuff? Because I've seen the pages you fucking do, man. Like that's a lot of detail and a lot of time. Do you have to take regular breaks to stretch your neck and just click everything out of place?
Yeah, I mean, it helps that, I take a snack break or breakfast break. Lately, though, I've been pretty bad about getting to work right away. So I end up, maybe watching some news items or something like that while drinking some coffee. And then I'll come in here for maybe an hour, and then we'll have a breakfast break after that. So I have like little breaks here and there, and I do, stretch my hand out a lot. I find I don't get that much neck strain and stuff. I don't know if it's because I've been doing it for so long that my body's used to what it requires for the day. But by the end of the day, there's times where, I have to really massage my hand really well because it's gotten sore or whatever. And particularly because I have to be very conscious of it because my mom's side of the family has, for lack of a better term, a tremor. It's not identified as any particular disease like Parkinson's or anything like that. It's like one of those, the doctors kind of talk about it as if like it's one of those unknown neurological
just a medical
things,
mystery type thing.
Yeah, that can be passed down through family. And a lot of people on my mom's side of the family has it. She has it really bad. I started developing it years ago and I hadn't realized it was coming on. And I tried in my work. I didn't realize it was compensating for it, and I ended up developing carpal tunnel. And so I had to have that treated for a while. This was back, I think, when I was working on. It set in when I was working on the first book of Seven Soldiers. I think first or second book of Seven Soldiers, and I had to get a lot of treatment for it. Didn't need surgery or anything, thank God. But so I have to stretch it out and stuff, and it's something I contend with every day. And that's a little bit of the reason why my pages take a long time too, because I do like having them detailed. But I have to, it's a dexterity control issue at that point. And unfortunately I don't suffer a lot of pain. It's just sometimes my hand will get sore, that achiness thing. You massage it out and just be very conscious of it. And I'm conscious of what I do too with that particular hand in terms of heavy lifting things or stuff like that, because you don't want to set that carpal tunnel issue off again. But I ended up doing acupuncture actually.
Oh, really? Did that help like much?
Yeah, I did it for maybe 6 months, and it really helped a lot, because the pain was so bad. Like I couldn't grip things for a period of time, or if I did, it was very painful, like this sharp, hot knife pain right in here. So that helped a lot, and then just keeping things stretched out and stuff. Yeah, pretty wild.
Yeah, man, it's brutal. Like I've got in my right hand, I fell on some glass in a bar and severed two tendons and a nerve in my hand, which lost the mobility of my third finger. So I had to have 2 operations on it, and like I still can't feel down the side of that finger, which is why I suck at finger picking on the guitar. Well, that's my excuse anyway. It is one of those things where it's, even if I'm like pushing a trolley and it's like on an uneven surface where it's like rattling, that'll fuck my hand up for a bit if it's cold, and like I'll be on my if I'm on my computer and a mouse, I can feel like my hand starts like freeze up, and it is like a weird thing where you just have to be conscious of letting it take breaks and rest up and heal. But I assume you have a better setup in your office space as well for where you draw. Like today, I was literally just hunched over the dining table like a cretin doing all these things, so that's why everything hurt when I stood up.
I have I don't know if I can. Will this thing turn? No. I have a really nice custom-made art table.
Oh, nice.
That I did. I bought that. Had that made. Oh man, I want to say 15 years ago now. It's really heavy wood and cherry finish. Nice art table. Yeah.
Cool, man. And I don't know, like I can't see your office and stuff, but do you have much like art on the walls and things? Do you have like things around for inspiration?
To this side over here, I have a Michael Golden Fantastic Four cover that was gifted to me from my wife. I have a Seth Fisher Batman Snow cover from the book that we did together before he passed away. A Vampirilla poster, classic poster. One of the fun things I have is I have an old ad print from it says dairy chocolate on it, but it's Batman.
Nice.
A couple Blondie things. I have my DC sent me one of the images that they would use at a convention for when they're promoting stuff. How they would put stuff in, up on their displays and stuff. And they apparently made one for the first Batwoman cover. And they just randomly sent it to me years ago. It's interesting because it's like on this almost like a plastic.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I got that framed up and put up because I thought that was cool. I got a Jim Steranko signed folded poster, which from something that's not one of his more famous images. It's like this barbarian thing called Talon.
Oh.
Yeah. And I think the first time I met him, he had one of those at his table, and I'm like, it was hardly, he was asking hardly anything for it. I'm like, I'll take it. And he decided to. And then I have framed up my copies of my Sword album cover and the Blondie album cover that I did. That's pretty much it, besides the menagerie of toys in the background.
With kind of comic art and stuff you've collected, was that all from conventions? Do you have like a book? Like I've got a few pieces, like I've got a Peter Laird Ninja Turtle sketch and a Val Myrick Man Thing and stuff. Do you have like that itch to collect those type of pieces, or is it when you're at a con, if something pops up, you'll grab it?
I'm really bad about collecting original art from comics. There's stuff I would love to have. I have a few things, but a lot of it isn't framed up right now. We have plans to get them framed up. But my wife recently bought me for, as a gift, this Steve Rude Nexus painting. So that'll be getting framed up soon. But as far as pages I own, I've got like a Gene Ha page from Top 10, which he gifted to me. It was really sweet of him. My wife bought me Rick Veitch Swamp Thing spread. And then I've got some Bernie Wrightson pages from later in his career. I think from, what was it? The Ghoul or something like that. Stuff like, just random things here and there. I've got Michael Lark set of panels that were, I think, spliced into a page.
Oh, really?
Daredevil? Was it Daredevil or Detective Comics? I can't remember. So I've got a bunch of things like that I want to get framed up.
Cool, man. And with your own work, is it mainly like traditional, like pen and ink that you do, or have you moved over to digital at all?
No digital for me. I'm kind of persnickety. I like the aspect of being traditional.
Yeah.
I like the risk of not being able to just easily fix something if it doesn't go down the way I want, and try to live with what's there, or try to make something that's a mistake not a mistake.
Yeah.
So like you puzzle it out. Also, I think because of the thing I was telling you about with the dexterity issues, I don't know if it would work as well digitally.
Yeah.
I think I'd have a hard time navigating the sensitivity of the tools,
And with like a lot of your work, do you have like a lot of the pages you've kept? Because I don't think I've ever seen many of your pages kind of pop up to be sold or on like any dealer sites or anything. Do you keep the majority of your work?
No, we sell a lot of it, but I don't use any agents to do it. So people have to contact me directly. I have some things in like my web store is where usually most of it goes, or there's things that we keep too, but we don't keep a ton of it. And that's the other cool thing about doing it traditionally is that one of a kind artifact aspect, that even if I don't own it and someone else does, it's like this one of a kind artifact that exists out there in the world. There's something I appreciate about that aspect.
Yeah. All right, man. And obviously you mentioned working with like the Sword and Blondie. How did those kind of projects come around to do music, like artwork for music and bands?
Well, it was something I was always kind of fascinated with. As you know, from previous conversations, I'm a big music fan, and I had done a little bit of things here and there with Danzig, some comics things for him here and there. And that sort of got me thinking like, it'd be cool to do art for musicians. And the Blondie thing happened kind of in it was a really weird way. So me, my wife, our friends from Isotope in San Francisco, which is a great comic shop, and our friend Victor, who's friends with them, we're all Blondie fans. So I get this random text from James Syme at the Isotope saying, "Hey, Blondie's going to be playing, just north of here, and they have VIP tickets. We meet and greet tickets." He's like, we all should go. This is when we lived in California, and we lived about 2.5 hours from San Francisco at the time, and they were playing at a place just north of San Francisco. And so we thought about it, like, oh, that'd be so cool. And so we went in and did it. It was expensive to do, but we decided to do it. And I thought that was, I keep getting a telemarketer call. So we went, and at the time, the first hardcover Batwoman had just come out. And so I'm like, I'm going to bring this because we're going to have this meet and greet, and I'm going to, hand them a copy of the book. So they, hey, this is what I do. Hope you like it. And so it was interesting. The first, the meet and greet happens before the show. And we're nervous. The band is clearly like, oh, we're meeting a bunch of strangers. This is awkward. I could barely speak. And I gave them the book, and then they did, the obligatory photo taken and all that stuff. And then we were escorted out for the show to start. But as we were walking out, Debbie Harry was in the side room. And my wife saw her with the book open, and she was looking at it and pointing it to somebody and saying, that's, they just gave this to us, check this out. And so that was cool. So at least I knew it was being looked at, right? So we go to the show. The show is fantastic, of course. We check out the merch booth after the show, and we're talking a little bit with the opening band who was there, and they were signing their CD. And they're like, you guys have VIP tickets. What are you doing out here? And we're like, oh, well, the meet and greet was before the show. And they're like, no, come on. And so they took us backstage, and we're hanging out there in their whatever the lounge room is back there. And there's some other people who clearly are friends of the band, people they're hanging around. So a bunch of people are there. The band's not out. And then they finally start to come out, and Chris Stein sees us and makes a beeline right for us. And he's like, man, that book, that is something else. That is a hell of a book. And just was, talking to us a little bit. And James Syme, he's so funny. He's like, Chris, this guy here, he's like, you got to know what he does. And he goes, he's like, he's super talented comic book artist, well regarded. And he goes, he's worked with Alan Moore. And then Chris paused for a second, like, Alan Moore. And so that sort of kind of pivoted the conversation in a weird way, surprising way. And I get awkward in social situations, particularly if I'm, see a possible opportunity to try something, to work with somebody I hadn't worked with before, whatever. I have kind of bad etiquette sometimes. Like, so the first time I met Neil Gaiman was super awkward. But I just blurted out. I'm like, well, if you ever need an artist, I just blurted it out. Just no like pretense. And Chris paused for about 5 seconds. He goes, next album cover. Nice. Just like that. And so you're like, are you serious? And he's like, no, yeah. And then you leave the show, you go to your hotel room or whatever, and we're all like, oh my God, that was so great. And you like, is it, he's being nice, right? by the time we left to head back home, he'd already left the message on my phone.
Nice. No way.
And in that time frame was like, I didn't realize who you were. I looked you up, and he's like, and he's apologizing to me because he didn't know who I was. And I'm like, you're fucking Chris Stein. And that's how that whole thing started. So he was deadly serious.
Yeah.
And then they were just about to release Panic of Girls. And they did an edition of Panic of Girls that came with like a special magazine and a deluxe version of the CD. And in the magazine, they put Batwoman art and announcing I was going to do the next album cover right in there. I'm like, so yeah, and that's how that got started. And that turned into a long process because Blondie takes their time. Yeah. A lot of time between albums sometimes. So I got that job. And then randomly with The Sword, I just got an email out of the blue for that from their business manager saying, hey, The Sword guys love your work. Would you ever consider doing an album cover for them? And I was like, yes. So the timeline is funny because I got the Blondie gig first, the Sword gig second, the Sword gig album cover comes out first, then the Blondie cover. So yeah. And then I've done a little bit of work with Jerry Other from Misfits. Probably will be doing more with him. Just did another thing for Blondie, and then another band. I don't know how much of that stuff I can say publicly yet. But I love that whole idea of working with musicians because I love music so much, and it also broadens my horizons creatively to try to do things that are not comics,
Yeah. Do you approach it differently? Because I can imagine with comics, it's especially with creative stuff like Echolands, you can have like this specific vision and you don't really need to appease anyone except like yourselves. But when it's working with a musician, was there a lot of like concept sketching or drafting? Like I've just had a Mothman single come out and I was working quite a lot with the artist at the very first stages to just get the first look right with like what we wanted to do. Was that kind of process with those type of musician projects?
Surprisingly, relatively simple, actually. The Blondie thing was kind of surprising because, here's this legendary band. I mean, like worldwide legendary band, right? Super iconic, one of the most influential bands to ever come along. And so I was super nervous. For one, I was a huge Blondie fan to begin with since childhood. So the whole prospect of even talking to them on the phone, like I saved Chris Stein's voicemail on my voicemail forever because it's just so surreal of an experience for me. But when it came time to talk about the album, they sent me demos, and so I listened to them, and I always confer with my wife a lot about ideas, particularly if I'm unsure of something. And so we both were listening to songs and trying to get a feel for it, and it had this particular kind of interesting quality. And so we wanted to think of ideas that fit the feel of the music, but yet be something unique. And so I ended up getting on the phone with Chris and Debbie to talk to them a little bit about the ideas, and they were just sort of like, yeah, sure, whatever you want to do. Very hands off. It was very strange, which in some ways made me even a little bit more nervous because it's like, well, what if they hate the final product? But along the way, it ended up being such an interesting back and forth conversation, not on the visuals, but on just the whole thought process behind the album, to where Chris Stein actually was like, hey, I'm trying to think of some, album titles, They hadn't even named the album, because that's one of the things I wanted to know before I actually did anything. And we went through a list of names between me, him, and my wife, and they ended up settling on a name that we thought of.
No way.
So yeah, so we got to help name the album, which was really surreal.
Fuck.
But once we knew what that was, it helped
Yeah.
define the direction of all the visuals. And even at that point, I think I might did a thumbnail sketch, but I think most of it was just like verbal description.
Yeah.
On the phone, and they were just like, yeah, go for it, whatever. And then when I had it all done, the package design done for the LP, CD, deluxe CD, so there was like 3 different variations of the packaging, and each one of them has something kind of different about them. And I sent them all the files. Man, that was a seriously nerve-wracking day, because it's like I sent them all the files, and then it's crickets. No, didn't hear from them till the end of the day, and I finally get a phone call from Chris, oddly enough, while I was at the local comic shop, and he's like, "No, it's great, love it, love everything about it. Debbie thinks it's one of the best album cover art we've had."
Amazing. Yeah.
That was the Sword Guys. I was in close communication with JD, the singer. It was much more of a conceptual conversation. So I would send them compositional sketches based on the conversation we had, but it was a lot of, they were highly receptive to what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
They just wanted to make sure they understood it, I guess. And a lot of the concepts I came up with were based on conversations I had with him about what does he feel like the album is about.
Yeah.
Lyrics are about that kind of thing. And we stumbled on his whole idea of what the word apocryphon means. And that led to a conversation about the alphabet of desire, which is, a magical practice where you come up with some sort of mantra or a want, something you need fulfilled, and you write a sentence that represents that. You take the first letter of each word and make a sigil out of those letters. And then you meditate on it, and you can either destroy it at that point and let it go. That's a personal decision if you want to do that or not. And he loved that idea, the whole notion of that. And so we used that as a premise for the sigils that represent each song. And then I had each member of the band come up with their own mantra of desire, whatever that is. Tell me what the letters are. Don't tell me the sentence. So it's personal to them. And I created a sigil for each one of them. And then JD came up with something for the album. So there's an album sigil that I have no idea what that means at all.
Yeah. No way.
Yeah. So that sort of thing wouldn't have happened without having those, conversations. I love that,
Yeah. That's so cool. Is there any like bucket list bands or anyone that you'd like consider like working with that would be like the ultimate dream if you got to do some album artwork for them?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. As far as like a current artist that's doing lots of new work, it'd be amazing to work with somebody like John Batiste. That would be brilliant. His album that came out this last year was probably the best album all year for sure. I mean, it deserved every award it's up for. Older bands, classic bands are still around. This is a pipe dream because I don't think it would ever happen, primarily because the way the band operates now, but the Sisters of Mercy.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be incredible. Fields of the Nephilim would be incredible, but I think they kind of do all their own visuals, possibly. Fields. Those are two bands that had a huge impact on on my life. So that would be pretty incredible. But yeah, I'd be open to anything. I at one point I actually got an email from Wu-Tang Clan wanting to do something, and then it just, I don't know what happened there. It just sort of like, I got the message and we talked a little, like I sent a reply back and it just like evaporated. You know?
And then they moved on to just making that one solid gold record for I think. They were like, what if we just did gold?
But yeah, I'd be open to working with any number of bands for sure. You know, it's hard to pinpoint who you'd be more excited over, other than maybe someone you grew up with. So
but touching on what you were talking about, the Blondie meet and greet, one thing I've kind of wondered about comic artists like yourself and stuff, if you do comic conventions and things, I always thought comic conventions were a bit of a weird place for artists and things, because if you're a comic artist or a writer, you aren't really necessarily an extroverted person. You aren't used to wanting to, you know, meet a ton of people, especially strangers at like any point in time. Are
lots
those
of social anxiety stuff?
Are those difficult situations? Because it is one of those things where if you're locked in a room for 6 hours a day working on comics and things, you are in your own kind of space and world, and then you're thrust into, you know, if it's San Diego convention or a comic convention with thousands of people, are those like not necessarily just like highly stressful things, even though they are, you know, great and positive things you can get out of them? Are those situations that you do kind of get anxious about?
Yeah, I do. You know, I feel like I have social anxiety issues a lot, but over the course of doing conventions, I guess because I did a lot of conventions before my career was something to talk about. So I was used to that sort of parameter of, you know, talking to fans and stuff. But that dynamic changed a little bit the more my career grew. So there is a little bit of a weird element. This sounds strange to say, and it's not a bad thing, but you do have this feeling of like, okay, I have to be on. You know? And so that can be a little bit, you can get tired from that a little bit. It's not, I'm not, you know, trying to say it's a negative thing that to be on. But there is that certain, you don't want to be around fans and leave them with a terrible feeling, you know. They're there to see you. They want to have a good experience, and you want to feel like you've given them worthy of your time and their time at this, you know, both. But you know, it can be a little tricky because you want to be conscientious of what you say, how you interact, and things like that, you know. So I imagine for somebody like Blondie at one of those meet and greets is probably similar for them in a lot of ways, but were they probably like, well, you know, there's that weird awkwardness. I think the thing I'm happiest the most with that, how that whole thing came out, besides doing the artwork, is the fact how incredibly receptive they are. Particularly Chris is so receptive. You know, we quickly fell into what feels like a friendship. You know, I can text him randomly and we talk, you know, randomly that way. If they're in town, I get to go see them, hang out for a while, you know, that kind of thing. So they're extremely down to earth. So I think they, you know, they probably feel like, you know, like a comic artist does at a convention, where, you know, like you want to be able to relax and just be yourself. That, you know, and it's good if you can get to know people in a way that allows you to do that, to kind of take that edge off a little of the situation.
No, definitely. Because I've been to like conventions around the UK and stuff, and I've had some interactions with like artists and writers, and they've not been the best. They've been either a bit short or stuff, and it's one of those things where I start like, well, it's not their job to do this. And it's the same thing with if you go to a Comic-Con and there's like celebrities there, or it's like they still have their own shit to deal with. They still have their own anxieties and issues to
Yes.
get through. So
Yeah.
you could have caught them on a bad day. You could just be catching them where they've been drained. If it's like the second or
Yes.
third day of a convention, it's like there's only so much gas in the tank.
Yeah. I'm sure there's been instances where someone walked away feeling like I wasn't as interactive with them as they would have liked. I'm sure there's been instances like that. And a lot of times it depends on what point of the convention too.
Yeah.
Like if it's a long convention and you're day 3 or 4, it's hard to have the brain power to hold a better conversation to somebody, it's tough. So like, at cons, a lot of people want sketches and stuff. I quickly got to a point where I'm like, okay, I'm only going to do 1 or 2 sketches a day, not a little bit nicer piece than the fast thing, primarily because I wanted to be able to slow things down for people who come up to the table. So I'm not just like constantly, face down and ignoring them. I can just take it easy and try to give them some attention because they've come to see you, So.
Have you done any conventions in the UK?
No.
Because I was thinking, I've gone to conventions since like 2012.
Yeah. Yeah, I did some signings, but I don't think I've actually done a proper convention in the UK. I've gotten some invites, but it's always the worst time.
Yeah.
It's like I turned down a lot of invites because of timing. For one, conventions are hard to do.
Yeah.
Just in general. And so I have to, and it takes a lot of time away from my projects. And my projects, like I was saying before, the pages take forever. So if I travel, that's like a lot for me to take mentally and emotionally take on. Like, oh, that's time away from my project and that kind of thing. Well, but when I'm there, I do enjoy myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did, as far as Europe is concerned, we haven't done any shows in the UK. We did do Spain, and we did Belgium and France. And then from there, I think part of that trip, we went up and did some store signings in the UK.
And do you think like conventions are necessary to promote comics, or do you think there's a best way to promote them? Because obviously from the music side of things, I kind of see like, single reviews, like press publications, that kind of stuff. But with comics, there's really like review sites and then sometimes conventions, but really they aren't enough of a cycle to really sink your teeth into to promote something regularly unless you have like a huge stall with lots of copies for sale.
Yeah, I think there was a period of time where conventions were a great place to promote your projects. But here's, as an example, San Diego Comic-Con is so massive that it got to a point, I feel like, and probably still will be that way when it returns, is so massive that you get lost in the crowd. Of announcements and this and that. As an example, when Sandman Overture was announced at the convention, it had all this press. You had outside press from outside of comics coming in, doing all these interviews and doing a big giant panel and all that stuff. And then yet, even with all of that, there was people that didn't know it existed for, even after it came out, there was people that didn't know it existed. So it made me wonder about how relevant those events are in terms of promoting stuff nowadays. Even like with Echolands, we had a lot of people talking about it, and still it kind of gets lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
Where people, I didn't even know this thing existed. It's like, it was only, advertised everywhere, kind of thing. So, and I don't think it's necessarily the website, like if it's a review site or a comics news site, it's fault, or a convention's fault. I think there's just so much material that people can forget about things
Yeah.
quite easily. There's just so much to take in now,
Yeah, it's like the best and worst thing about the internet is just there's so much content that it can just everything gets lost in the shuffle.
Yeah. And I'm personally, like with Echolands, being my own project, I'm not the best promoter in a lot of ways. I'm not like one of those guys like on there 24/7 pushing that button. For one, I don't know how some of those guys do it in the first place. I'm like, how are you getting the work done? But I just don't have that brain, I guess, to be constantly in promotion mode.
Yeah.
I'm like, just so it's like you have that to contend with too. How good are you at being the guy selling your wares?
Yeah, but then that comes down to the same thing where it's like, can you be on all the time? Because then that's just going to be another drain on yourself, especially if you're in the middle of a project and creating. You don't want to be burning yourself out on Twitter when you've got your actual creative shit to deal with.
Yeah, so like that's a really good point. So like when Echolands was about to hit the shelves, I was doing tons of interviews for the promotion of it. So, a lot of it set up through Image or myself. And it's interesting because that little period of time, you don't get to get much work done.
Yeah.
It actually ate away at the production schedule, doing that sort of stuff. So any of that that's the thing, is like that the promotion stuff is work.
Yeah.
And it's hard for that to not interfere with what actually needs to get done. Because at the end of the day, what anyone actually cares about is the end result. They want to have that book in their hands, you know? And when you're an artist like me, that takes a long time, that can be hard to navigate. And, I've, the last couple months I've had to, tell myself it's sort of a little out of my control.
Yeah.
So like we'll have a publishing gap between issues 6 and 7 of Echolands. I don't know how long that gap is going to be yet because I'm still on issue 7. And so it's like one of those things. Me and my wife had talked about it, and she's, because I get stressed about that dynamic, and she's like, "Well, is there anything you can really do about it?" I'm like, "No." And she's like, "Okay."
Yeah.
It's just, the readership has to either accept it or they don't.
Yeah.
What can you do?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the good things about Image I've always found is they do have those breaks and people do kind of accept them. It was the same thing with like Saga's come back, and that had quite a long break. And
3.5 years or something like that.
Yeah. And the cliffhanger it fucking left it on.
Oh, right.
Because I've been behind, I'm behind on pretty much all of my comic reading, and I buy the Saga hardcovers. So I managed to avoid all spoilers, and I got like the second or third, I think it was the second hardcover, and it ends on that. And then I literally was like, what the fuck? Went on my computer to like Google when the next one was, and it was just like, it's on hiatus. And then it came back like the other month, and I've avoided everything at the moment because I still want to get the hardcovers. But that is one of the things where you do kind of accept, especially through Image. It's a hiatus because they're gearing up to create the next wave of series. Yeah. And so that was sort of like this weird emotional thing for me to learn. As a reader of Image Comics, I understood that on a technical level as a reader, like, okay, I'll come back when it's ready. But when it's your own project, and the bulk of my career has been for a major publisher where that sort of is not the thing. I've been super wary and stressed and nervous about the inevitable publishing gap. Yeah.
And so I've had lots of conversations with Eric Stevenson over at Image, and he's always like, "It'll be okay." It's, And then when it came down to issue 6 about to hit shelves, and I'm still working on issue 7, I'm like, we got to figure out the publishing schedule. What are we going to do about the next arc? And his response was super sweet of him. His response was like, he's like, well, don't worry about it. And then he's like, but just so you know, we are doing it. And he's like, we'll worry about solicitation again when you've reached a certain number of issues again.
Yeah.
And he kind of seems to not sweat it.
Yeah.
Which is helpful for me as a creator to like, okay, my publisher seems to be rolling with what's happening.
Yeah. How long did it take for these first 6 issues? Like, when did you start like the first page of issue 1 up until completing issue 6? How long was that period of time?
It was bizarrely extra long. I don't know if I could. It was years for sure. But multiple things came up during that process that kept derailing production.
I remember reading in the back of issue 1 is like the Where We Live anthology and all the things and the pandemic and everything.
Yeah. So, first of all, we moved to another state. That was much more time consuming than I thought. I had barely started the first issue at the point that we decided to move. So our moving wasn't planned in the schedule. So we got set up here. That took a lot more time than we thought. And then shortly after moving here, getting back to work, then I end up being deathly ill. I almost died.
Oh, fuck no.
I ended up with appendicitis. We suspect just before I went into surgery, we suspect it burst because after surgery, I came home after surgery and I only got worse after coming home. So we had to go back, and it turned out I ended up with sepsis. So I was hospitalized for quite a while. I didn't realize how bad it was until after. And my wife was explaining to me how bad it was. It's a very scary proposition, particularly for her. And in the recovery time, I got back to work, I don't know, 4 months after. But it was slow. I was really exhausted. I don't think there's certain aspects I still deal with left over from that. And that was years ago at this point. But the amount of energy it took for me, like I remember coming home, I couldn't get up the stairs. I was so incredibly weakened. I was so exhausted that even my mind, the way I was thinking about things changed. So it's like your subconscious was like, because I knew I had certain things I had to do. Because like one of the other things I had to do, I had signed a contract to intermittently, while working on Echolands, do an illustrated version of Dracula for Amazon. So they wanted me to do 50 illustrations for a new edition of the novel. And they were really gracious about it, about me, what happened and stuff. They even sent me like a little gift. It was funny. They sent me like a stuffed kidney or appendix. My wife just said appendix. But afterward, I was so exhausted from the whole incident that it was funny. I kept telling them, I'm like, I understand if you need to move on. I wouldn't say I'm bowing out, but I kept like giving them the option to, because I kind of was like, yeah, I'd be okay with that because I'm exhausted, but they just kept waiting and waiting and waiting. And so I ended up, once I started feeling better, I started working on that and while picking away at Echolands. But that whole process, I mean, I lost probably 10 months just with that whole process alone.
Fuck.
And then as we, start getting back onto production, then the whole Vegas shooting happened and the Where We Live book happened. that ended up being a much bigger process than we anticipated. Emotionally exhausting.
Yeah.
My wife did a lot of research in finding the people who would actually talk to us, who were involved, that, were affected. They were at the event. And so before we connected them with a creator who would tell their story in the book, we had to do these, what we considered a pre-interview, an interview in preparation of the interview. And that was really difficult, hearing firsthand stories. So there was that aspect, and then all the production time that took. Even though I only did some of the illustration and a small part of the illustration, the amount of time it took was just crazy. I think we lost another year to that. So there was like all these little things that kept, happening. I made a joke with Hayden, my co-author on this, that I'm like, is this book cursed? And then the pandemic happened. It's just everything slowed down, and the work taking so long, in combination with that, the book is so challenging to do that there's no way it would ever meet a standard production schedule. The whole thing is a learning curve, and in some ways it's a learning curve all the way through. So at the beginning, I thought the pages, I can do these pages in the same amount of time I would spend on, Batman or Sandman pages. Even those took longer than normal too, but not in the way this did. And because I was like, okay, yeah, we're landscaped shape. So what? It's the same. I'm working on the same dimensions. It's just turned sideways, right? No, it changed everything. It was such a learning process on how to set up the visual storytelling that it was very difficult. And there's still things I'm learning along the way, where I guess working in standard comic book style or format for so long, even though I do a lot of double pages, for so long, your brain is automatically imprinted for that shape, the portrait shape, I guess it's called. And so even today, there's pages on the new issue where I'm like, oh yeah, no, that doesn't work the way I thought it would. And so I have to make these adjustments, and this constant learning curve. And that slows things down a lot too. So there's things where the layouts might deviate from what was described in the script when we wrote the script, because I have a certain thing in my head that I put into the script, and I'll have to radically change, So that's pretty fascinating. Now that technical slowdown, in combination with dealing with the variety of art styles, all the world building. So that's the other thing that makes this book a little bit slower to produce, is it's a giant world that we're building with lots of diversity of locale. So every time you move, and then we don't stay in one location long. So every time you change location, you have to rethink all of what your set dressing is. But because we're not in location very long, you cannot flub any opportunity to sell the environment. Right. So every panel, I have to consider what's in the background, because I only have a limited opportunity to convince the reader of what the setting is. That all takes a lot.
No, I'm behind, so I'm going to admit I've only got the first 2 issues of Echolands so far. I've got the others coming, because I think issue 6 came out this month. At the beginning. So I've got the first 2 issues, and just those panels are just insane levels of detail. But for this next arc, do you have a certain amount of issues or a certain amount of pages you'll have in the bank before you start soliciting the next arc of things, or do you have a goal in mind?
We don't have a set number of issues. My conversation with Eric at Image, he's like, we'll talk about solicitation once issue 8 is done. But I have a feeling that will probably stall out from there, because you want the next arc to roll out consistently, or change, or you'll have to change the time between issues. So maybe it becomes bi-monthly at that point, or something like that. So like one of the things we did with the first arc, we had simultaneously, beginning with issue 2, you had what we call raw cut editions come out, which is where you get to see the artwork as it looked leaving my studio, just for the fun of doing something like that. So if we decide to continue with that, which I think Eric wants probably to do, maybe the setup will be, we have, instead of those coming out at the same time, so like issue 2 came out at the same time as raw cut number 1 came out. So maybe what we do is like you have issue 7, then the next month is issue 7 raw cut.
Yeah.
Kind of spread it out. That's something I'm thinking about. I don't know if that's what we'll do, but that would buy us more time. And particularly because like the part of the story that we're in right now is so since you've got issues 1 and 2, you've been introduced to Rosa.
Yeah.
We get to see where she's from.
Oh, cool.
So everything is like her. It's all fully black and white rendered. Those pages, it's taking me 2 weeks easily for one spread.
Yeah.
So when you look at that and you do the math versus the number of pages per issue, plus cover, plus writing, plus back matter material, it's like a long time.
Yeah.
It makes me feel, I have a lot of trepidation over it, but it seems like the people I've heard from, a few people wondering about the schedule on like Twitter or whatever have been kind of like, well, wait, don't rush it, make it what it's supposed to be. So which is nice. Hopefully that's true when they actually hit the shelf, and they'll be there to read it.
That's awesome, man. And one of the things I loved about these issues, at the back of them you've got like what you were listening to at the time and stuff. What was the thought process of including those into it? Was it just to give the reader a bit more of a depth to what your process is, or was it, look how fucking cool my record collection is?
It was, we just kind of did it for fun. So like,
because the one thing I love as well is it's not just like the artist and the record, it's what it is as well. So it's like marbled vinyl or whatever it is.
I'm showing off my because it's a lot of the items are my wife's as well that we choose. So we're showing off our fetishist attitude towards record collecting there. But when we were working on Sandman Overture, this is what kind of gave us the idea to do the raw cuts with Echolands. So when we were working on Sandman Overture, they decided to do what they called Sandman Overture special editions. And those rolled out between the regular issues of that series. And one of the things that the editor thought about including, because she knew we were such audiophiles, she's like, hey, let's put the list of what you listen to in there as one of the features in the special edition. And so when we started thinking about what should be in the Echolands back matter, we were thinking, oh, well, that might be fun. Let's do that again here. It's turned out to be quite popular. I just, I was looking for pages to fill rather than putting in ads.
Yeah.
I know there's been a couple people who are like, well, couldn't you just like add more art or more some other backstory feature instead of using those pages? And I'm like, we're already giving you 24 to 30 some odd pages per issue of content. It would take even longer to get the issues out.
Yeah, like if someone's saying that, like, and if someone's saying, tell them to go fuck themselves, man. Like, how dare they ask for more? But
for the most part, people are super excited about it. So like, it's funny because like when I get letters from fans, that inevitably comes up in one form or another. Some people are like, oh, I don't know why that's there, but most people, I'd say 80 to 90% of them love that feature. And when we decided to do it, we had no idea that that was going to be so popular.
Yeah.
And I still don't quite know why it's popular. My wife, she's like, no, it's going to be popular. So like when we started getting the first letters for the series and that was being brought up a lot, and she's like, I knew that was going to happen. And I it's interesting that it's become so popular. And the only thing I can think of is it gives people like, oh yeah, I like that same band.
Yeah.
You know, I can connect with this creator as another human being. Yeah. Because of the shared love for this music. You know?
It just peels like the veil back a bit more where you're like, oh, they like, because in this it was there's a lot of Bowie and Ennio Morricone, and it's like, oh, fucking awesome. I really like those, and you like looking through. Like I really enjoy that. Like the biggest regret I have is when I met Stan Lee, I wanted to ask him what music he listened to because I didn't know, and I'd never really heard it in an interview. And it's Stan Lee, and I was meeting him, and I completely just froze. So I never got to ask him, but that's the type of things I really like to find out about people, is because you can tell a lot by someone's music taste and their choices.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah. So I'm stoked that people are super excited about it, and enough to where people were like one letter came in recently, and they're like, yeah, Echolands gets moved to the top of my reading pile right away. Now, not just because they like the story, but because they're eager to read that feature. They want to see it. They want to know what's going to be in there. And it's prompted a lot of people to go explore things. Like if they haven't heard of something, they're like, oh, well, what is that? Yeah. And they go discover something, whether they like it or not like it, And that's fun. It's like this little music community,
Yeah. No, definitely, man. That's so cool. And like one of the things I do love is that like you've included the letters, because I don't think Marvel books have them in anymore. I haven't read any Marvel in a while, but you don't really get to see that much anymore. And I really like that you've included that as part of it. Was that kind of one of those things again where it's building a community with the Image being a relatively independent publisher? It's just something else to build together.
Yeah. I've always loved letters pages too in comics, and it's sad that some went away to such a large degree. Because I don't know. I think people like to see what other people's thoughts are. Like, you might read a letter and you're like, oh, I didn't think about that particular detail in that way. Or that you can relate to something in the same way that the letter writer relates, So yeah, I was really eager to have a letters page, but at the same time, it does make things a little daunting, because you're like, well, are we going to get letters? Yeah. We don't get as many letters as I would like, and I don't know. We have gotten quite a few from people who are like, oh, this is the first time I've written a letter to a book. So I think maybe because letters pages aren't so common anymore. And so maybe some people are like maybe nervous to send off a letter, or they don't want to. They like the book, but they don't feel like they need to comment about it. So there's occasion where we'll have, multiple letters printed, consecutive issues by the same person, because they write consistently. We've had a few people that, write each time. And so, which is fantastic. I love that. It inspires them to keep writing to us. But yeah, it'd be great to have more letters for sure.
And did you ever send in any letters when you were reading books? Like when you were younger and columns were still a thing?
Yeah, I think I did. I can't remember to where, but I think it was probably to a Marvel comic when I was little. I don't know if it got there. The cool thing about the letters page is that we've heard from a couple people who haven't written a letter to a comic in, according to them, decades. And they're like, oh, they see a letters page, they like the material, and it has inspired them to write a letter, and they haven't written a letter to a comic in forever, for a long time. That is super cool. I love that.
Yeah. No, that's what, because I wrote a letter to, in the UK, they did like a reprinting of like a ton of Marvel comics. So they always used to do like a Spider-Man one where they'd have like a few issues of like the Jay Straczynski Romita run. And they brought out one which was half Daredevil, half Hulk. And it was like the Mighty World of Marvel was like the reprint of it. And I was collecting them when I was like 10 or 11, and I wrote in, not knowing that these are reprints of Frank Miller's run from like the 80s.
Oh, yeah,
so I had no idea. I thought this was like fresh shit. And I remember it's awful, like looking back on it, but I was a dumb kid. But I was like writing and being like, I really hope Daredevil and Elektra work out. And I look back and I've still got that comic with like my little letter in the back from when I was like 11, and it's like, but I just,
it's cool.
But I just love those letter columns, and like you see, George R.R. Martin wrote into a Fantastic Four, and I've seen that shared around the internet where he wrote to like the Fantastic Four, which is just awesome. But I do love those letter columns, and that's what I really enjoyed about this. Was it's like there's so much extra that's not necessarily just like artwork and about the story, but about world building and community building.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't know why letters pages went away to begin with, other than maybe it became a time management issue in terms of the production time for comics. If that had a role to do with it, or they needed to cut it because they needed to have an ad to help pay for the comic's existence. But there's something that's really nice about the whole idea of, people being inspired by something like that to where they write, and I think it promotes the health of the book. Even if the sales are not so great, it is, I don't know, I guess. And the other thing, the internet has made a big impact too. Like a lot of discussion about comics happens on the web, and so maybe that plays a role in why a lot of letters pages don't exist anymore. But I kind of feel like, I don't know, I like the whole idea of like, well, let's make a thing where people feel like they can have some sort of investment in it. In the letters page, I hope feels, like that contributes to that.
I think it's important for like comics, especially that aren't part of the big two, where you want that loyal, like, cult classic, like they've got a cult following to it, because it's kind of like the same way like Clutch, like they aren't a massive band, but they're diehard fans because they've got that connection with them, and it's that type of thing. You don't need to have a million sales, but if you have consistently those people buying the book, that's going to just keep everything churning.
And it also builds this thing where like the amount of, because like some of the letters that we would get, I created a special email account for those to go to, and some of the ones, if I'm short on time, I say, we'll try to reply to this in the pages of Echolands. But there's other instances, if I have time, I'll pre-write my response that will end up being printed in Echolands, but I'll email it to them. And a lot of people were like, whoa, you've taken the time to actually respond to me directly. And I think, that can help in terms of how people, like I said, the investment the person wants to give to this thing that they think they like. And then if you build that sense of like, know that their interaction with you or their investment in your project matters to you enough that you will respond to them. Even if it's a short response, you're giving them a response. That can help the health of the book. So that person could be like, maybe more likely to say, hey, I like this thing, and tell more people that they like this thing. And maybe inspire others to maybe check it out. I mean, that, I guess, positive energy creates positive energy.
Exactly, man.
That's what you hope for. So like the situation with Clutch, every person that they have gained as a loyal fan hopefully is inspired in a way to share that love to somebody who does not know Clutch yet.
Yeah.
So it's like this slow ripple effect.
Yeah.
Grow, and I think that's relatively true when you think about it. Clutch might not be this ginormous band, but look at their career trajectory compared to where they started.
Yeah.
Right. It's that ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
More and more people know them. And that probably has a lot to do with not just the quality of their music, but with they want that engagement. You know? Yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. Well, I've talked up quite a lot of your time, man. I don't want to take up too much of it all. So I'll let you go soon. But obviously, you're working on Echolands at the moment. Is there anything you really, because I know obviously you've got a huge record collection behind you. Is there anything new you've been spinning or anything you've dove into lately, music-wise, that you've just been loving?
This morning we replayed Concrete Blonde's Bloodletting. Haven't listened to that album in a while, and such an incredible record. Incredible record. Enough that I'm like, oh, I wish Johnette Napolitano would make some new music. That's incredible stuff. What else did I listen to recently? I tend to file stuff away quickly. So. I recently picked these up. I haven't listened to them yet, but I've listened to some of the songs. I know some of it. But the Mississippi Shakes. Oh, nice. From Third Man Records, which is it's like, I guess it's the complete recordings over 5 LPs. This great old blues stuff. I've been, I don't know, my tastes are so all over the place. Like, it's hard for me to pin down like something I'm jazzed about more than another. Yeah. I get into these weird little kicks, I guess. So like, but I always have love for old blues or funk stuff. But then I'll be equally as excited over, like the LP that I got from you was fantastic. Oh, thanks so much. Or the new Orville Peck. Cannot wait for that. So no, I was trying to find someone made a playlist on Spotify called Country Music for Communist Bitches. And I found it because obviously I have my artist profile on Spotify and you can see what playlists you can't even add it to. And I got added to an Orville Peck like fans playlist, and then it was me on this kind of playlist. And Orville Peck was on that, and I was like, if I can find out who put that playlist together, I want to send them a t-shirt because it made my week. I bet. But that's awesome. But with such a diverse like genre hopping style that you have, what was the first genre that you sunk your teeth into that you really like loved? The first genre that this probably will make you laugh, but the first records I ever bought with my own money was Blondie. It was, I want to say it was the Atomic single. It was probably the first thing I bought. I think it was Atomic. But I liked, at that period, I liked them, I liked things like early Human League or early Gary Newman or the first couple LPs from A Flock of Seagulls, actually. But then after that, I got into like really deeply into goth. So I'm an old goth. So I was heavily into, and what started it for me actually was the discovery of the Sisters of Mercy and Bauhaus, of course. But I think it was really the Sisters of Mercy. So like my trajectory for that was the first LP I got that would be considered a goth record was the first Mission LP, God's Own Medicine. And I fell in love with that. I was like, whoa, what is this? And at the time I was like a big fan of David Bowie too. But I noticed that I gravitated to a lot of the stuff from Bowie where he's saying in a baritone. For some reason, that tone of voice really resonated with me. I don't know why. Still can't say why. It just stirs me inside, you know? So hearing Wayne Hussey on the Mission UK's God's Own Medicine, I was like, wow, what is this? You know, it had all this emotionality to it. It's darkness, and I was attracted to the dark sounds of it. And this was back in the day where I lived in the Bay Area, and I would, after work, would go to the record store, Tower Records, and I would scour through all the LPs, and that's where I discovered the Mission. And I was looking at the Mission record, already familiar with it, and I had it in my hand. Maybe they had put out the first chapter LP, which was like that collection of singles or whatever. And I think I had that in my hand. I was looking at a copy of First and Last and Always from the Sisters, and I'm like, why do these things seem related? I don't understand. I couldn't figure it out, other than Wayne Hussey's name was on there for that first Sisters LP, and I'm like, trying to wrap my head around it. And I ended up asking one of the people working there, I'm like, hey, do you know anything about this record? And they're like, well, if you like that Mission stuff, you're going to like that. Not understanding that one came before the other. The Sisters came first. And then I took that home, First, Last, and Always, and that just changed everything for me. I was like, I heard that record, I'm like, what is this? It was so intense. Not to dismiss what the Mission does or did back then, but I feel like the Sisters material had more profoundness. It really, I don't know, spoke to my soul, I guess, for lack of a better term. And I just became obsessed with the Sisters off that, and then immediately found out that, oh, well, this really isn't their first material. They have these singles and EPs that came before that. I found some of that stuff as imports on, things like Temple of Love and Anaconda and Alice, things like that. And hearing those, and those were distinctly unique compared to First and Last and Always. So First and Last and Always, you can definitely hear that Mission in Wayne Hussey influence in some of the way that some of the shimmering guitar work and things like that is there. Before that record, the Sister stuff before that is just as profound and compelling to me, but it has an even colder, darker edge that I just like, oh, this is even more for me. And then just followed them subsequently from there and splintered out into other goth bands, Sisters of Mercy, Bauhaus, Joy Division. I'm sure there's some others I can't think. Well, Fields of the Nephilim, of course. And I love their evolution, how much they changed. And of course, I went and I became so obsessed with the Sisters that when I began to read up about them, found little things that I could read up about them, and discovered that there was all these offshoots and related projects like, the March Violets and James Ray and his various incarnations. And I fell in love with all of that stuff, even though it doesn't all quite have that same sound. But at the same time, even though I got really into goth music, I was still really picky about it. I wouldn't just accept any goth album that came along. However, as much as I love the Sisters of Mercy, I would say probably it's a competition in terms of what I would consider the darkest feeling record is a toss-up between their EP Reptile House, which is insanely intense, and The Cure's Pornography album. That's another band that went through an interesting evolution because they started off kind of with a little bit more of a punk attitude, and then went where they got a lot of dark gothy stuff going on, and then moved into almost like a dreamy pop thing, so I think one of the things that's so appealing to me about The Cure's Pornography is that the first half of the album is dark. It's like what you would expect from classic Cure or whatever, and you're listening to it, and you flip it over, and the second half, well, that first song is even darker than the first side. It's pretty dark. I don't think you can get darker than that. The next song starts. Oh no, it's even darker than that one. And that whole second side just has this trajectory that's so brilliant in terms of capturing that oppressiveness. It just keeps getting darker and darker and darker as it goes. And that is, I don't know, I just can't, almost relish that feeling. I don't know why. And so I was really into that stuff. But then I would also like things like, I'd like the transition that the Cult made, where they went from sort of a gothy act in the early days into, they kept getting more a rock influence, and then when Love came out, Love is such an incredible album from them, and then the follow-up was Electric hits the stands, and you're like, what? All of a sudden it's like this big arena sounding glorious heavy 70s rock attitude in there. It sounded like the title. It was just electric. And I love that trajectory too. And that hearing stuff like that, or hearing like the diversity of what Bowie's output would be, or the diversity of Iggy Pop's output would be, where Iggy Pop could go from a punk record to doing something like The Idiot or blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then Blondie too, my exposure to Blondie, how Blondie never allowed themselves to be pigeonholed as a sound. People tried to, but it's like, as they progressed, they're like, no, if we want to do a reggae track, we're going to do a reggae track. If we want to do a 60s pop thing, we're going to do a 60s pop thing. And I think I really appreciated that. And they would do that all in one record, right? One LP. And I think that opened me up to the diversity of sounds. Being able to jump from one music genre to another because of what my early experiences with that stuff. And I think that translated to my comics work, actually, in a weird way. Because growing up in the Bay Area, I was exposed to a wide variety of comics in different styles, and was enamored by all of them. And that translated to what I do now, to where I'm all over the place, because I'm like, oh, I like to, let's see what this does, and let's see what that does, kind of thing,
That makes sense. Like I was going to say, like the evolution you were talking about, and Blondie not sticking to a particular style. Obviously you have, like, if you look at a piece by you can see that it's your work, but it's not so one track that you can't see like all the evolutions and variations. Like if you look at, from Batwoman to Echolands, you can see that it's you in the foundation and you're there, but it's the transition and the evolution and you wanting to do other things and take those risks and, challenge yourself. It's all on the page to show that evolution.
Yeah. And also it's sort of like me exploring, well, what does this particular style technique do? What's it feel like when I look at it? What's it feel like when I draw using a certain type of line versus a different line on this panel next to it, or whatever. And part of my evolution for that came from my work on Promethea, because lots of parts of Promethea was sort of like this acknowledgement of an appreciation of all art. And so I started looking at a lot of different things. I'm like, oh, wow, this, look at this art on these Mexican film noir posters, compared to, but look at that next to this Mobius book. Completely two different things, but I would be super excited by all of it. And Promethea kind of was built in a way that would allow you to dabble in those various things, particularly as we started exploring the second arc with the Kabbalah Quest storyline, where each realm had a different feel. that really opened up things. And I quickly learned at that point, because early in it, I don't know how it is for other comics creators or artists, when you're early on in that trying to build yourself, there's this thing like, well, what is my style? What is my thing? And for a long time, like when I was trying to be an artist, I had that going on in my head. Well, what am I do? What am I going to do that's not like anybody else, right? Yeah. And my time on Promethea kind of taught me that it was a bit of a trap. And my time on Promethea, because we would research various types of art. So, some are way older than comics for sure. That I was like, okay, anything I do has already been done stylistically. I cannot bring anything new in terms of a style no one has seen before. That just is nonsense. It doesn't exist. So I might as well look at what all these styles that are before me that I love so much and see what I can learn from them.
Yeah.
By toying with what they do and incorporating it in a way that might not be expected. And so Promethea brought that. I explored more of it on the subsequent projects like Seven Soldiers and Batwoman and Desolation Jones and Salmon Overture. It just kept propelling that. And so I guess if I could say I have my style is the exploration of styles.
Yeah.
And how do I make them, what do I do with them that maybe it is a commentary of the style, or that style that I chose is a commentary on what the story is doing. That sort of stuff. And I think one of the things that holds it together is my exploration of panel design holds it together, and the underpinnings of all of that stuff is still my sensibility of construction. The way I set up a panel, or all that is still under there, even if I'm dabbling with a European quality line work on this shot or whatever. And I feel like it's such a big, vast world of art that's already existed that I just look at what I do career-wise is just one big long learning experience that will never end.
Now, that's I think is the best way to do it, because obviously I'm a huge fan of your work and how you describe it and how you talk passionate about it. It is, if you're trying to be a creative person, or if you are a creative person, finding your voice doesn't necessarily mean you get to find it on the first album or the first book you do. It's each one is just the chapter or the verse of what your voice is, and then it's only when you really look back, it's like, oh, that's what my style is at that point. But that doesn't mean it's going to be that full going forward.
Right. And there's things that I was exposed to as a kid. Like I think somebody ended up asking me, oh, you must have been, is Jim Starlin's work an influence on your work? And I think at the time that I loved Jim Starlin for sure, loved it growing up, one some of my favorite stuff, but I never considered it an influence on my work until someone asked me. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I went back and looked at different pages that he did, and I'm like, oh yeah, I see the correlation. Something he maybe did with a layout was interesting, or whatever like that. And a lot of those things I was exposed to as a kid that I don't necessarily fully recall a specific page. It's sort of like this weird subconscious imprinting that sort of regurgitates itself out in the creative process. Is it same probably that way for you with music too, I imagine?
Yeah, definitely. Like sometimes, like I remember when I was in my first band and it was like you are trying to work on what you're doing. I always kind of fell in the trap of listening to the same genre I was playing in. And it got to the point where I'd go to practice and show a new song to the other guitarist, and he could basically tell me what Metallica album I'd listened to that week. And it's one of those things where it's just like you don't realize how much you're absorbing
Yes.
subconsciously. And it's the same type of thing now where I'm trying to write something and I can kind of see who I've kind of been influenced by or who I've stolen that from. Because it's in the latest single I've released. I directly quote Public Enemy because I'm just a huge fan of that. And I always had their Man Plans, God Laughs track has just been like, I'm a huge fan of that song. And I included Man Plans, God Laughs in this single because it was just in me. It's just one of those phrases I've used for so long that it was part of my vocabulary of explaining stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just, you don't realize until you actually sit down. And if I'm writing a song or I'm working on something, it's like, oh, that's from that. But then it's twisted in a way that it's not really recognizable until you go back and look at it and go, oh, it's from that thing.
Yeah. So that, for lack of a better term, a remix of thought.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, I think it's interesting because there's a tendency to some degree of some people, but I think this is sort of disappearing over time, but there's a tendency to like, oh, well, we can see the influence on whatever. So, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? Kind of, but now I think we're evolving to a time where, because we're in such a mishmash world where you have access to just about anything all at once, that something like in my wife thinks it's a little funny because I've gotten obsessed with a lot of old music, and here I was like this goth guy that she met me, but here I'm going back to like, oh man, this LP from 1969. Listen to this. This was happening in 1969. But for me, it's like that was recorded in 1969, but I haven't heard it until now. Yeah. For me, it's right now. And I think there's a lot of that going on in all kinds of creative mediums where it's like this mishmash of creativity. And so hopefully that little bit of an attitude like, oh, well, why are you drawing like so-and-so, or why is your song sound like so-and-so?
Yeah.
Hopefully that goes, being considered a negative thing go away, because I think it's inevitable that we're going as creative people, if you're partaking of creative projects as someone who loves them and a fan of them, and you are a creative person yourself, you cannot help but be inspired by it in some form or another. And it will show in some form or another. No, sometimes definitely overtly and sometimes not overtly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. I think there's a defeatist attitude, or there used to be, where it's like, like you said, like everything's been done, everything's been said, everything's been drawn, everything's been seen. But that doesn't mean I don't get to say it again in my own way if I want to. Exactly. If that's how I feel at that time, I get to say it again with my own voice.
Exactly. And over time, like your expression of a certain style of song that calls back to something else, you might recognize that, but someone new or a younger music fan might not know that reference.
Yeah.
And so you dabbling with it kind of gives them something like to explore. It's new for them,
Yeah.
And I think the trick to it is like when, like for myself, is fully admitting that.
Yeah.
And not pretending, oh no, there is no one else like what I do.
Yeah.
There's probably there's other like, particularly like in panel arrangements, unique panel arrangements. There's some artists out there from decades ago who were doing so much similar thing and probably did it better, but I'm still learning. I feel like I've learned from them and trying to make something that is how I see it.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And be honest about that. Don't pretend like, oh, well, no one does what I do,
Yeah.
It's like nonsense. Get out of here.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the thing, because I remember I learned about Robert Johnson because there was an article in Metal Hammer magazine about like devil music, and it's obviously like all these metal bands have been singing about the devil, but did you know in the 30s Robert Johnson was singing about it? I'm like, oh shit, and that's why I did do that. But then, in comics, someone can do a panel with like the Kirby Crackle if it's in space. that might be someone's first introduction to Jack Kirby, to be like, well, what's that effect? Someone goes, oh, well, that's that. And obviously, those comics are still there. Obviously, he created all these characters, but unless you go back, you may not necessarily know that he was the guy who was drawing them back in the day. And it's having that transparency and being open, and it's like, yeah, like you aren't acting like you created the fucking thing. It's just like, I'm paying homage, I'm paying tribute, and I'm opening the door that if you want to go that way, there's a ton of cool shit that you can find that way.
Yeah, even though that's a very direct example, like the Kirby Crackle, and you see a lot of people use it, and which is fine, but there's a reason they use it.
Yeah,
because nothing looks better, right?
Yeah.
So use it. And I find myself gravitating to using Kirby Crackle energy here and there. You'll spot it as you go along the Echolands here and there, because my feeling when I look at that stuff from him is like, yeah, that feels right. That feels like the energy that I can feel it. And so you want to, if you're trying to capture that same feeling, not just a style thing, but the feeling of you get, and you're trying to capture that, use it. Why wouldn't you? No one did it better. Yeah. So, and I think, being completely open and honest about that is like a way to be creative, I guess.
Yeah. That's all you can do, because you can't be creative in isolation, because you wouldn't be able to, you'd have no base of reference, you'd have no inspiration. Like everything has to kind of feed into itself, and then hopefully you kind of regurgitate something that's an amalgamation and new and interesting, hopefully.
Yeah. And there's this thing, where something you might have thought of is similar to something that you haven't seen before. That happens where, creators will, or musicians will be on a similar train of thought without having been exposed to each other. But it's also possible both those individuals or band or creative team on a comic book were exposed to the same thing in their past. Yeah. Even though, you know what I mean? Yeah. So there's all these tangential connections that can happen too, or a similar train of thought or a similar idea. You see it in science fiction, right? You'll see science fiction authors who might not have ever read each other, but oh wow, well that's so similar to this mode of thinking over here, but doesn't mean one is wrong just because it came first or whatever, or came second after somebody else.
No, definitely. And that's like the beautiful thing about the creative process is it's, you get to, if you want to draw from those inspirations or you want to subtly hint at something, but it doesn't mean that you have to just like copy it. It's just however you want to interpret in your own style. And that's what I really like about your work, because especially in terms of comic books, like with Echolands, it touches on, pre-established like myths and legends and characters, but they're still fresh. It's still an interesting take on it. It's still subverting your expectation of it.
Yeah. And then with, a lot of things in Echolands are very purposeful decisions, versus say some of those things that might have cropped up in Batwoman, let's say. Cause like, it's interesting. Cause like some influences can be a purposeful choice. Like, this character, I see this character I think is this, and that reminds me of this. So I'm going to go with that feeling. Yeah. But then there's other instances where you might have like randomly something in Batwoman or whatever, where it's like that influence is there, but you're not consciously aware of it. That happens a lot, I think, for a lot of people. Yeah. More than they realize. They'll do something and not even realize. Well, almost like what you were saying when the guy, I could tell what Metallica record it was. But you weren't conscious of it. And that's not a terrible thing either. It's just like you were inspired by that, and it's kind of feeding into your the energy that you're putting out. I think it's all cool. And I don't know how many people rail against that sort of thing, but they shouldn't.
It's there's an elitist culture in everything, but there are hopefully they're normally just a minority. They shout the loudest sometimes, but as people just kind of ignore moving, maybe that's why they stopped doing letter columns, because there were so many people being like, well, actually, Spider-Man already did that in issue 31, so if you're doing it again in issue 84, you're sadly mistaken, sir. And it's just like, just let people enjoy things, man, and create what they want to do.
Exactly. Yeah. My wife makes a joke often. She's like, sometimes people just ruin it for themselves.
Yeah.
She's like, just enjoy the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the funny thing, man. That's with all the new Star Wars things and stuff that comes out, there is just like people just work themselves into a frenzy about it, and it's just like, just let it go, man. Yeah,
we just recently watched Boba Fett, but before we watched, I didn't like do deep dives on it in Twitter or anything like that, but randomly I would see a comment here or there where people are like, "Oh, it's so awful! It's all this and all that." And we watched it, and I'm like, I have nothing to complain about.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not perfect, but nothing is perfect. And I loved what it is. I loved the pacing of it. And,
yeah.
I don't know. So people are funny in that way. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, man. I just watched the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out today.
Oh.
And it's something. Like, the best thing about it, I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older, but it was like an hour and 20 minutes, which was amazing because I got to have me dinner, watch that film, and then I came on and started prepping for this and stuff. So it was like I got to watch a film and do something else in the evening as well. It wasn't just like a 3-hour chunk like most films are now.
Oh, yeah.
But I saw, like, after I'd finished watching it, a lot of people just like raging against it and how awful it is, and just a middle finger to the franchise. And I'm like, watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, it's not like a franchise that's absolutely hallowed. Like, you can't be getting you can't be getting too irate about it. It's just like, just let it exist as what it is. If you don't like it, whatever. But to be saying that it's, the worst thing ever is just ridiculous. People just need stuff to fight against sometimes.
Yeah, right. People are funny.
And there we have it, folks. That is episode 46 of Into the Van, Into the Bag. Please support the things you love. Go check out Echolands by J.H. Williams III and Hayden Blackman on Image Comics. It's fucking brilliant. Go listen to Rogue Radio. Go support Rogue Country. Go listen to Mothman. Go listen to The Next Life. And, listen to things I'm not actively involved with, so, I don't seem to be as biased as I am. Enjoy your week, guys. Keep doing the things you love. Keep supporting the things you love. And until next time, peace.